Hey fellas, welcome to Guys in Grief, sponsored by Emma's Footprints and First Candle. We started this podcast for fathers like us that have experienced pregnancy or infant loss. You see, when we went through these life-changing experiences, we struggled to find resources that were specifically for men in support of navigating this grieving process. We're not doctors, we're not psychiatrists, we're three friends. We're grieving fathers that have been through the unthinkable and want to help others by talking about the unique and often undiscussed perspective of men that have experienced child loss. We welcome you to join us on this journey. Share your stories, the challenges, laugh with us, maybe shed a tear or two, and help each other as we navigate honoring our children, grief, supporting our family, and trying to find better days ahead. Let's get into it. Well, hey fellas, I'm Brad.
I'm Brian.
Damn it!
Oh, slick, man. I did it on purpose, too. I was like, I jabbed that one in there.
We're going to practice.
There were three clowns where we can't get our name or organization right.
Hopefully you know our names by this point.
Yeah, good point.
I hope so.
I'm just going to keep serving it up until we get that one right again. I'm doing great. How about you?
Wonderful. Brian?
Yeah, I'm doing so good. I went skiing with my son today.
Nice.
In Connecticut, and it was awesome. We finally went up to like the big hill, and he crushed it. It was awesome.
He's quite the athlete, isn't he?
He loves his sports. Yeah, just like his dad.
Awesome. Congrats.
Where did you go, Brian?
Mount Southington. It's like 45 minutes from where we live. It's like super easy mountain and, good kiddie hill. And I went with another dad and his son. It was great.
Awesome. Well, guys,
I'll join you on the bunny hill.
or the bar after, probably.
Right now. Hey now.
Ta-da.
Après ski.
That's right. Guys, I got two things I'm super excited about. One, we all get to see each other this weekend.
Dun, dun, dun. We need like theme music for that.
Oh man, I gotta start working on some
so
of this media
excited.
stuff.
When's the last time we saw each other?
I think the infamous golf photo that is on the Instagram.
Oh my God.
As far as us all seeing each other. I see Brandon all the time, as everybody I think knows, we're family. Brian, we saw each other for the fantasy draft 6 months ago or so, but it has been a minute since all of us have been together. Listeners, the Emma's Footprints has an annual winter gala, and we will be in attendance. We'll be sharing about the pod, and it's going to be a really amazing experience being there to support Emma's. But frankly, just to be back together with the boys. So
booted and booted.
Brandon's going to be wearing his finest threads.
Yes, that means a Bills jersey, Bills fitted, and my Brooks because my feet hurt because I'm old now. So that's what it is.
Brian, you want to do the Dumb and Dumber suits at first, right?
I already looked up the pricing, and I may be wearing something that is close to it, but classy.
Fair enough.
Is it a penguin suit? Please say it's a penguin suit.
It's close to it.
Yes.
He's gonna make us look bad.
It's one of those T-shirts that's like a tuxedo T-shirt.
The party. That's like
right.
the bachelor party T-shirt. Jeez.
Yeah, and it gives me the six abs that I don't have. The six pack.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's impressive. Second thing I'm excited about, guys, is maybe excited is a weird word, but as you know, and I think many of our listeners know, March is Pregnancy After Loss Awareness Month. Today is March 1st that we're recording. We released our last episode on having children after loss, correlated perfectly with the beginning of the month. But I've got some news to share with you guys, not for myself, but our guy Shane Connolly is pregnant again.
Oh, that's awesome.
Awesome.
Congrats, Shane.
Oh my gosh. Excellent. Congrats, bud.
So I think
a hockey player.
That's right.
Yes.
Anybody that's listened, Shane was our very first guest.
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't have a ton of the details, how far along or any of that, but he texted me a couple days ago and let me know the good news. His emotions, understandably, are all over the place. Very much aligned with what we talked about last episode. But couldn't be more happy for them, and we'll be praying and pulling for the Connolly family.
Absolutely.
Way to go, Shane. That's awesome.
Congrats, bud.
Brian, why don't you take us into GG Q&A?
Okay, G&G Q&A. So this week, I'd love to dive into how we all handled the anniversaries. And I know all of our listeners know what we're talking about. It's the birth dates, it's the due dates, it's maybe the day you found out you were pregnant with your partner. They're obviously very difficult dates. In some cases, it's also the death date in my instance. And it's not just the date, it's the weeks leading up to date. I know we've had to postpone some podcasts because it was leading up to these anniversaries, and it's a very tough time. So
Yep.
I'd like to dive in. Brad, you go first, but talk a little bit about how you and Jess handled those dates and how you felt during it. And I'd also learn like how every anniversary, have you gotten better, or is it still the same pain and difficulty?
Yeah. So with Beckham, when we lost him, as I've talked about, November 19th, 2020. And so for me, the big date is that day. His actual due date is I can navigate. That's a little bit harder for Jessica, but for me, I can navigate. Any of the other sort of significant, the due date is the big one in my eyes, or the day that we met him, rather. I'm sorry. And so we were trying to put ourselves, we were in the transition phase, living in Ohio, on our way between Connecticut and Pennsylvania. And we said, let's just get a night to ourselves. We're going to rent a hotel room in downtown Pittsburgh, go for a dinner, be away from Ashton for a little bit because we're probably going to be in our feelings all night long and we don't need him to see that all day. And let's just kind of get away and be together. And then for those of you that listened to my pod, the day before that, we lost Ariana. And so we still went. We still had a nice night. We didn't go out to dinner. We ordered room service in the hotel room, but that became a sort of dual experience for us, both grieving Beckham and then obviously in real time grieving Ari. And I realized that experience, I hope, is not very relatable to many because of the timing. This past year, just a couple months ago, we really tried to put some positivity in the world. And so what we actually ended up doing was, for November 18th and 19th, we spent those days at Magic Kingdom and went down to Disney. And we were there for almost a week, and we knew we were going to be miserable for the whole week leading up. Clearly those 2 days, emotions all over the place. And we thought, why not put ourselves in the happiest place on earth and try to honor them and celebrate them. And we did things at Disney and with the characters, and released balloons that we wrote their names on at Disney. I don't know if you're allowed to do that. We probably could have gotten in trouble. Get wrapped up in the tower somewhere, or on a roller coaster, but we did it, and it was super cathartic for us. Obviously incredibly heavy, and I'm kind of choosing to not talk all the heavy stuff on this and just focusing on my case here on how we try to put some positivity in those difficult times.
Yeah, I think that's really special that you went outside the box a little bit and dedicated special time for you and Jess at that moment. Brandon, tell us a little bit about some of the anniversaries.
The anniversaries,
with Story.
For Story, her anniversary is coming up April 7th, really soon. So, first anniversary, I think it was. We planned on going to Disney also. I think that was the biggest thing. But we couldn't do it on her birthday. Wait, no, remember, it was COVID.
Literally,
we were going to go to
hit.
Literally COVID hit. And so what we were going to do was we were going to go to Tampa to WrestleMania when Brad worked for WWE. And we were going to go there, have a good time, and then go to Disney and celebrate Gabby's birthday. And we couldn't go because of COVID. I'm sorry, Jesus Christ, you're right.
Yeah,
I'm looking at Gabby because she just lost her tooth, so I was looking at that picture. But Story's birthday for our anniversary. So
and a month earlier, COVID hit.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that was gonna be the best trip ever, by the way.
I know.
But
were you guys able to both actually be in the moment with each other, or were you there and you're like, this is all I can think about is.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I was kind of numb to it, to be honest with you, and I was more again going back to my stage of being the protector and making sure Joellen was okay. Really stepping in on that role and just making sure she was comfortable and she was okay, and making sure that, again, going back to the routine that I am, making sure the house is okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, like wow, like it's coming back to me like more because I kind of like just put those things away within. After it happens, I'm like, all right, we're through it. Everyone's okay. Let's keep it going here. After that, we donated. I think we did the same thing that we did during Christmas, just donated gifts to the Sisters Hospital. And then from there, I think we had birthday cake. So we kind of make sure we do it. We do a family thing where we have a birthday cake. I
we do
purchased a birthday cake, and we have like a family gathering. Gabby gets to help out, blow out candles and stuff like that for Story's birthday. We FaceTime our parents, and if they want to stop by, they stop by. But then FaceTime Brad and stuff like that, and Jess and Ashton. So we kind of keep it a real family aspect of things, and keep it real intimate, I guess I can call it. So what about you, Brian?
That's really interesting because you guys kind of scheduled things directly with your spouse, and in our situation, especially that first anniversary was like, it felt impossible. Like you feel the weight of it coming up. Like Austin's birthday is December 14th. I mean, we felt it in Thanksgiving, like end of November. You're like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to function that day. Like, it's just the sadness just starts weighing on you. And we made the decision, especially the first anniversary, to spend it with family. And we thought having family around was the best thing for us because there's just a lot of love. It's a little bit of a distraction that you got people around, family around, and I think that helped us. Every year we go to his grave and we spend a couple hours there, and we bring sandwiches. We essentially like have lunch at his gravestone, and we do birthday cake, and that feels nice to sing him happy birthday. But it's so tough, and as far as it getting easier or harder, it doesn't. It's, I mean, I had to postpone a podcast, like I said earlier, and I'm, I'm in our 4th anniversary of it, I think. So it's that time, his birth date and his death date for the fathers that, have lost their kids, after whether it's SIDS or anything like that, that the death date is also just, it kills me because we lost Austin on Martin Luther King Jr. Day or weekend. It was actually his day. And God, whenever that holiday unfortunately comes up, it's the same anniversary, and it crushes us. I can't work. So all those dads out there that are like trying to battle through it, like, it's okay to say, I don't need to work today. Like, today I need to be with my spouse and my family. And I think that's really important because the anniversaries can be really tough. It brings you back to that moment that it was just the worst moment of your life. And I think it's important to just take time with your spouse and family, like you guys talked about.
You hit on a big point there, Brian, that I meant to weigh in on, but I feel like on the anniversaries, we've mentioned this on other pods, but like the over communication, the over displays of emotion and love and support. I've tried to be really intentional on those days of, clearing my calendar, going above and beyond to show Jessica how much she means to me and Ashton how much he means to me, and just be there. And the triggers that normally might set me off, just trying to be really present in that space so that I don't get, because you're going to have every wave of emotion coming your direction, trying to not ignore those emotions, but embrace them and recognize, this is all a part of the feeling of honoring my children on this day. And so breathe through it, recognize it, communicate with your spouse, and move forward.
Did you guys feel like it got better at all as like, I know it's been, a couple, 2 or 3 times, but I mean, did you feel like it was a little bit easier following years, or
for me,
kind of the same pain?
For me, I think it has gotten easier. I mean, it's still, a punch in the gut during that time. Like, the more I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm like, wow, it is like very coming up soon. Like, you keep thinking about it. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
you got to kind of get yourself prepared. But it is, I mean, for me at least, I know some fellows can disagree and say it still effing sucks.
Yeah.
And we totally understand that. Like, totally understand.
Yeah, I mean, year 1 on Beckham in the RE scenario was just, I mean, that's unfathomable and hard to, that nothing's going to be like that ever again. And then you fast forward to a couple days in Disney. I mean, certainly a lot easier when you're making your son smile the whole time. So it did, the emotions necessarily didn't get easier, but my coping maybe has.
Oh, good, great statement, by the way.
Yeah.
Thanks, bud.
One last point. You brought up spending time with your living children. I think that it's also, anniversaries can be a time to remind your living children that they do have a sibling and they were here. And we do spend a lot of time talking to our kids here with us about Austin and what he meant to us, and that he's their sibling, and they should talk to people as he's their sibling. He's just in heaven. So it is a good opportunity to use anniversaries to just remember and honor your lost ones.
Great point. Awesome G&G Q&A as always, Brian.
Good job,
really excellent topic, and I'm excited to pivot here and welcome in our guest for the evening. Come on in to the studio, Mr. Scott Stoops.
Hello.
Hey Scott, how are you?
Doing great, guys. How are you?
Doing well.
Doing great. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. First of all, I love your names, Brad, Brandon, and Brian. All B's. It's fantastic.
No.
Well, and also our guest last week was a Scott, so
Oh, that's wild.
Brian talks all the time about look for the signs, and those are a couple of them right there, man. Huh?
Yeah, it must be.
So, Scott, thank you so much for your support with the pod and being on here with us today. And we know you've got quite a story to tell, and so we'll get into that in just a moment here. First, we got to know who's your dad and what does he do. Tell us a little bit about who you are. What does Scott do for fun? Where Scott live? What's work? All the things that make you who you are, aside from the story that we'll get into.
Yeah. Okay. So my name is Scott Stoops. I'm 35 years old. I live in Erie, Pennsylvania, and that is the home for Emma's Footprints. And I met you guys through them, actually. And you guys were down at the walk in Pittsburgh, I believe, this past fall. So I didn't know you, but I probably saw you there. So I was actually
rainy. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
that's right. It was.
Wasn't the best day, but I work for the United States Postal Service as a letter carrier. Love my job, long hours, but it's so rewarding and relaxing, and I walk a lot. So I stay in shape, don't have to worry about working out after work. So that's always a good thing.
Nice.
What I do for fun? Well, I like to play video games. I'm a gamer at heart. I started playing games when I was very little. Started on the NES. That's the Nintendo Entertainment System for you guys that don't know what that is. But
oh yeah, you're bringing me back.
Oh yeah, I mean, the classics, man.
Yep.
And I for a while I did YouTube games with my buddies. Did a couple podcasts before, and that all kind of stopped when we lost our children. And I haven't gone back since.
Interesting.
But I'm trying to get back into it, but it's hard.
Yeah. It upends your life, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like all your stories, it really hits home with me. Like when we lost our kid, we kind of just fled, and then it just kind of distracted us. And so everything that you guys brought up, it really, really hit home for me, and actually it was kind of get emotional listening to you guys' story. So
yeah. That is a normal part of this Guys in Grief podcast. We do it all the time. Scott, before we jump into all that, tell us about your wife, Sarah, and how long you guys been together, where you met, all that fun stuff.
Oh, okay. You want to know those details? All right.
Sure. Oh, yeah. So, guys, come on.
So me and my wife met at our previous job. We worked at Walmart. I worked at Walmart for 10 years. I was in hardware, and she was the cute girl in lawn and garden, and I would build.
Sounds like a romantic comedy.
Yeah, right?
It does, actually.
Superstore. Love that show.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, we love that store. And like, if you work for retail, it's like The Office. Like, you totally relate to everything that went on that store, like in that show.
The show
I've experienced. It's ridiculous.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. But I would go out in lawn and garden and build grills because I wanted to go out to, kind of see her or whatever. But she was attracted to me before I was attracted to her. But we won't get into that.
There we go.
We've been together for almost 12 years now. We got married in 2015. And we've been
all in Erie, Pennsylvania?
I met her. She was in college down in Indiana, PA. It's really close to Pittsburgh.
Yep.
And I went down. I went to school, culinary school in Punxsutawney, PA. So we were very close, and we just hung out there. And when I went to work, I lived in Erie at the time. After I graduated, I went back to Erie, and then I would visit her on weekends down in Indiana, PA.
Amazing.
Great. So when did you guys try to start having kids after marriage?
We kind of just let God kind of take over. Like, we're not going to try. We're not going to prevent it. We're just going to let it have things happen, take the course. And then in 2014, we kind of were starting to try to have some kids, and we were really struggling. It just wasn't happening for us. We had no idea why. We were starting to think maybe we couldn't have kids, so we were looking into IVF, other means to get pregnant. And then we had a miracle in 2018 when my wife got pregnant. And I should preface this too. From my previous relationship, I have a 14-year-old son as well.
Okay.
And when my wife and I met, he was 3 years old, and one of the things that really attracted me to her is that she took him in like she was her own son, which meant a lot to me. So
beautiful.
That's awesome.
What's his name?
His name is Chris.
Excellent.
Yeah. But we got pregnant in 2018, and we found out in August, and we were so excited because, oh my God, we're finally pregnant. This is happening for us. This is great. And then 1 month later, we lost our daughter at 9 weeks and 6 days, Celeste Evangeline. And we kind of did what you did, Brad, where after we had that loss, we had a trip planned for Disney to take my son down there because he'd never been to Disney. And that was literally a week after we lost her. And I was saying to my wife, I'm like, should we go? Like,
sure, yeah.
I am not. We were supposed to go to the happiest place on earth, and I'm not happy right now.
Yeah, a week after. It was enough. A year after. A week after had to be tough. Did you go?
Yeah, we did. We did that for our son because this meant a lot to him, and
sure.
we, regardless of how we feel, we gotta be there for our son.
You're a good dad.
Absolutely.
I try. Certainly hard, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And you know what? We had a good time. We kind of made us forget for a little bit, which kind of sucks because you don't want to ever forget your loss. But at the same time, remembering hurts so much. So to kind of forget for that week that we were down there kind of was okay. We kind of just left everything back in Erie. And when we came back, we dealt with it,
Yeah.
So, I mean, geez, even talking about this now, even though that was almost 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
It's still kind of like hits me in the chest,
So talk to us a little bit about kind of your discussions and thought process of wanting to keep trying after such a heartbreak.
So when we were down in Florida on that trip, we both got tattoos. is a shooting star with a B, because we called our kid Bambino, because at the time we didn't really know the name, so we just called our little Bambino.
Yeah.
And we each have a matching tattoo on our left arm because it's closest to our heart. And that was our way of honoring our daughter that we lost. And to even think about kids after a loss is almost impossible.
Yep.
I'm a person, like, when something really traumatic happens to me, I kind of just try to keep busy, keep myself distracted. I went to work like normal, just try to not think about it. I know that's sometimes not the best way of dealing with your grief, but
very normal, as this group can attest to.
That's why we started this podcast.
Yeah.
Let people know that that's normal.
Yeah, that is absolutely normal. Yes.
And just the thought of kids just was crippling to me. And I told him, like, I don't know if we, like, how can we do this again? Because is this going to happen again? You know, you wrestle with all these thoughts, and we kind of just left it alone, and then say, if it kind of left it up to God, you know, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, we'll see what happens. And well, it happened again in 2021. In February of 2021, we found out we were due again, and immediately it brought me back to our previous pregnancy, even though, you know, a lot, you know, 3 years have passed, so a little time has passed. And to know that we were pregnant again, I'm just thinking in the back of my mind, okay, when's this going to happen? You know, I was just thinking the entire pregnancy, are we going to lose him again? You know, are we going to lose this child? Yeah.
Like, it was that prevalent for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, it's one of those things where both that day, to me, I still have nightmares about. I relive that day every single day since 2018.
Were the doctors positive, or were they saying, you know,
did you have
your
any
head
concerns?
up, or like, yeah?
Well, it was tough because when we went into the doctor when we had our loss in 2018, my wife, I don't want to be like too graphic or anything, but she was basically bleeding everywhere, to the point where I knew that we lost our child, and she was having a miscarriage. And so we went to the doctors, and they're like, well, you know, no worries, you know, you could still be pregnant. And we were like telling her, like, no, we're telling you right now, our child is gone. Like, this is not happening. And they checked, and there was no baby in there. And they kind of were like, well, you could always try again. You know, no crying
just
over
what
this.
you want to hear in that fucking moment.
Yeah. And that's my biggest problem with doctors, is that a lot of them don't know how to deal with loss and lost parents. So they don't know how to talk to them. Their bedside manner is not that great, and kind of gets you angry at them. I kind of wanted to punch them in the face in that moment. So
yeah,
I don't think
it's a good idea for a future episode. We'll get a doctor on here so we can just yell at them.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. There's a lot of good doctors.
No, thank you. Yeah, thank you. There are good doctors.
Shit, you.
So let's go. So you get pregnant again in 2021. How's Sarah feeling at that time? Because I know you said you were, you know, it was on your mind the whole time. Was she the same?
Yeah, we kind of felt the same way. Except I didn't want to talk about it, and she wanted to talk about it, which, you know, that's typical for couples, where the guy doesn't want to, just kind of want to shut down and kind of do their own thing. And but we both felt happy. We were grateful that it happened, because we kind of chalked it up to the first pregnancy. Well, that was God letting us know that we can get pregnant. We can do this. And I started feeling a little more at peace as we got a little bit further into this pregnancy in 2021. And everything was going great, you know, until we got up to like 9-week mark, you know, and I started thinking around 9 weeks, I'm like, okay, this is when we lost our last pregnancy. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? You know? And to kind of ease our mind a little bit, there is a place up here, trying to kind of remember the name of them, but they can check what the gender is at 8 weeks. So Now, we said we lost our daughter in 2018, but we don't really actually know if it was a boy or girl. We just called it our daughter because my wife said in her heart it was a girl, and I'm okay with that. I'll say it's
Fair
a girl,
enough.
So we didn't want to do that in case we have a loss again. We didn't want to not know the gender, so we decided to figure out, get tests done to find out the gender, to get a sonogram and everything, and the baby looked great, and we found out we were having a little boy. And which I'm excited about because I already have a son, so I know how much fun boys are. So
yeah.
So that helped us get us through that 9-week mark. And then after that, we were like, almost like someone just took a lot of weight right off my shoulders, and I felt lighter. And I was like, okay, we can do this. We can get through this pregnancy. We got this. We're going to make it, and we made it into the second trimester. I'm like, okay, that's one hurdle. Not to kind of jump around though. When you think about pregnancy, especially after a loss, you kind of look at the pregnancy in stages. Say, okay, this is the goal I wanted to achieve. Okay, we made it to this point. Now what's our next goal? Okay, we made to this point. What's our next goal? And that's what we were kind of thinking about. We were trying to make it to the second trimester, and then we're trying to make it to the third trimester, and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, in 2021, it wasn't our lucky day again. Okay. This one's a little more fresh, so it's a little harder for me to.
Yeah, take your time.
And again, just like 2018, I relive this nightmare every single day, going to work, coming home from work. My wife started having contractions at 18 weeks and 3 days. And I knew exactly what was happening, and I was trying to keep optimistic, but she was like, she was kind of cured over in our bedroom, and she was like, we got to go to the hospital. And I didn't want to go to the hospital because I know the doctors were bad to us last time, and we had some scares previously that we had to go to the hospital for. So like, I didn't want to go back there because I don't want to waste, spend the night in doctors or in the hospital again, because they're slow and it takes forever to find out anything. But she was in so much pain that I immediately, it was like, we have to go to the hospital right now. And it was the same deal on the car ride down there. She was just screaming in pain. I didn't know if she was going to have the baby in the car. And so we got to the hospital, and again, because of COVID, they had to separate us, which immediately pissed me off, because I didn't want to be away from her. She didn't want to be away from me. So I had to go to the waiting room while she was getting everything set up. And then they finally brought us together after she kind of like screamed and pleaded for me to, be at her side. And we came in, and I'll never forget what the doctor said to us. It was the most heartless thing. She took one look at my wife. She looked up inside and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, sweetie. You're losing your baby." Just like that. Like it was no big deal. And I was like, I'm like, what do you mean we're losing our baby? Like I had hopes that maybe we were okay up until that moment. And then it's almost like she just punched me in the face in that moment. And I was like, what do you mean we're losing our baby? And yeah, apparently my wife was, her cervix she was already 3 centimeters dilated. And they said they can't, like once it gets dilated, there's nothing you can do. And so it was kind of just like a waiting game at that point. So we just kind of stayed in the hospital and kind of just waited. But I'm a man of faith, so I was just praying the whole time, saying, God, please just give us time with our baby, or let it, save our baby, whatever we can. And he blessed us because we were in the hospital for 3 days. Now, I thought we were having our baby on our way to the hospital, and there was no reason why labor should have stopped or anything, but labor, all of a sudden, while we got into the room, labor stopped. And they checked his, on the ultrasound, checked his heartbeat. He was nice and strong. And we're like, okay, well, we're at 18 weeks. I know it's not probably going to be possible, but maybe we can wait out in the hospital for a month and a half, and maybe he could be viable and everything's going to be okay. And one day passed. It was good. We had family supporting us. We talked to everybody every single day. We kind of just watched stuff on Netflix to kind of keep us distracted, listen to his heartbeat, just kind of told him about our families. And then the second day passed, same thing. It was good. I was like, okay, we got this, and things started looking positive, and then we got to the third day, and I remember we were on Zoom with our family saying, hey, I think we're going to be okay. We just got to be waited out in the hospital for a while. I know it doesn't seem likely, but, we have high hopes. We're in good spirits. And in the middle of the night at 2:30 a.m., my wife went into labor again, but this time she was pushing out my son. And he came out breathing, which is a miracle in itself. And we had a book for him that we brought, and she's like, go read him a book real quick, because we knew we didn't have a lot of time, because we knew his lungs weren't strong enough to really keep him alive. And so I read him a story, and I saw him she's like, Daddy's here. He's gonna read you a story, whatever. And it almost looked like he smiled, or like his mouth opened up, and my heart just broke. And after I read the book, he passed away after 7 minutes being alive. And we kind of spent the rest of that day just talking to him, holding him, just telling him about the family. And I told him if I could, trade my life for yours and switch places with you, I totally would. And I know my wife would be okay with that. She would, everything would be okay. And, but yeah. And, we didn't think that day that we would have to make funeral arrangements. And so we called the funeral home, and we had to decide what we want to do. We want him to be buried or cremated. And we decided to go with cremation, just because we didn't want to, just the thought of him laying in an empty plot all by himself kind of freaked us out. I know that's a weird thing to think about. But in our minds, we were like, well, he'll be all alone. And so we decided to get him cremated. And we got him cremated with his little bear that we bought for him, and in the outfit that we were going to put him into him when he was born. And and I think that day, the hardest thing for me was giving him to the funeral home they had to take him away to get him cremated, and I didn't want to let him go. And in that moment, I know that I would never see my child again. And that was very, very difficult for me to do. So yeah, that's the long story.
Thank you for sharing, Scott. That's incredible and powerful. And I think a lot of our listeners are going to relate to that. Can you talk a little bit about the aftermath and the support system you had, and even your thoughts of going back to work? Did you go back to work? Obviously this is the second, incident that you guys had. I mean, I can't even imagine the pain and grief that you and your wife were experiencing.
Yeah. So after that happened in 2021, I told work, I called him in the hospital, just sobbing. I said, I can't go to work. I just lost my son. I don't know what to do. Can you please, just let him, please, I'm not going to be getting to work. I don't know how long. Just please, just give me some time. And they were really great. My boss was all wonderful. He said, don't worry about it. Take all the time you need. Just call us whenever you're ready to come back. And they took care of everything. I didn't have to worry about, trying to do FMLA or anything like that, which is really wonderful. I ended up taking a month off. I wanted to take more, but just the thought of not doing anything kind of, I was getting kind of stir crazy. So I kind of went back to work just to kind of get back in the swing of things again. But again, just like we did in 2018, right after we lost our son, we kind of ran away. That's what we call it. And we just booked a trip to to Tennessee. We went to Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge and just kind of just hung out down there and just kind of talked about everything, our thoughts. And So I guess you can say that we run away from our situations.
No,
but you're together. I mean,
yeah.
That's, it's important that you guys are talking to each other. I think that's important.
Yeah, and my wife and I, the biggest thing for us, and we talked about this very extensively. That I said, we will not let this loss destroy us. We cannot. So we got to do whatever we can to keep us together and to keep us going, because if we don't have each other, it's going to get even worse for us.
Such a great point, Scott. Talk on that. So what did that look like on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? How did you make that come to life?
Well, I mean, first of all, the biggest thing for us is we always believe in communication, always talking about our feelings. And up until that point, I honestly was not good with talking with my feelings. I kind of just kept everything to myself, just, being the man in the house, as they say. You got to do whatever you can for your family. You got to be the rock for your family. And I try to be strong for my family. And I was taught in my life to never show your weakness. So I try to kind of keep all that stuff bottled up inside me. But one thing I love about my wife is that she told me that it's okay to express your feelings to me and your son and show your emotion and what you're feeling, what you're going through. And ever since then, that's really helped us communicate even more, because now whenever we have a problem, I'm not afraid to talk to my wife about it or my son about it. Or if he's going through anything, we can talk about it as well. So the weeks after we had our loss, after we came back from the trip, that was the number one thing we did. We just kind of just hung out, talked to each other, and kind of talked about our future, our goals. We kind of talked about okay, what do we want to do career-wise? Because at the time, my wife was just finishing up her master's degree for teaching. And so we kind of see what does that look like? What school do you want to go to? Interview processes. And I quit I was doing YouTube for a while, and I quit that. And I told her, I was like, I can't do any of that kind of stuff. And kind of just wanted to talk to see how, what do we do about this? What do we want to do for our son's anniversary, his birthday for next year? What are we going to do for our grief? And we decided to reach out to Emma's Footprints, because we had talked to them briefly in 2018 when we lost our first one, but we didn't really go into anything serious. They kind of just talked to us for a little bit and talked about our loss, whatever, and then that was it. I never really talked to them again. But this time in 2021, we kind of reached out to them again. They were contacted in the hospital, and what's really great about them is that not only do they think about the women, they think about the men too. They set a care package for me exclusively, just to make me feel better. I don't remember what was in the contents of that, unfortunately, but that was one of the great things, is that they reached out to me personally, which was really wonderful, and I really appreciate them for that. And they have a service where you can talk to counselors, or kind of just talk with each other about our grief and what we're going through. So we kind of set that up, and we talked to somebody, every week for months on end, and just to talk about our grief and what we're going to do, how we're going to move on from this. And we did that for almost a year. And that helped out a lot. So anybody who's dealing with grief, that is my biggest thing I advocate for. It's okay to find help.
So Scott, what are some things that you and Sarah and your son Chris do to kind of honor the name of Dexter and Celeste, anniversary wise, celebration wise? I hear that you guys are obviously really tight already. So what are some things that do you guys do things as a family? Do you do things individually? So on and so forth.
We believe in doing everything as a family. We try to do things together as much as possible. I think that's important. For Celeste, it shames me to think, but I don't think on her passing as much as I do with our son. Oh, by the way, our son, we named him Dexter. I forgot to mention that. But what we do on her passing is that we just buy some cupcakes and we just kind of go out to our favorite spot at the beach and kind of just think about her and wish her happy birthday and eat our cupcakes in silence, just to celebrate her. And Dexter, after the year anniversary came around, we were trying to think what we wanted to do to honor him. And so we put on a huge party. My wife said, we're never going to celebrate any birthdays, or we're never going to have any parties for him. So we want to go big, a nice big party, just as one time to celebrate, which is kind of a weird thing to think about, you're celebrating the loss of your child, but it helps us deal with our grief, so anybody who's experienced loss like you guys, you totally understand where I'm coming from when I'm saying I want to celebrate the passing of your child.
Yeah, it's a celebration of life. I understand that.
And that's actually why we called it. We actually partnered with Emma's Footprints, and we called it a celebration of life, celebrating Celeste and Dexter. We did honor both of them, and we just invited everybody we knew, and we just had a giant party down at Presque Isle, the beach that we have down here.
Great place.
Yeah. And it's our favorite place to go to. And we just had like a Chinese raffle. We had everything was paid for. You didn't have to do anything, and it was just kind of just talking about your losses. And the coolest thing I got from that event is some of my aunts that I haven't seen in forever approached me and talked about, 43 years ago, I lost a child too, and I've never been able to talk to anyone about them. This is the first time I'm bringing them up, and I was like, the fact that this was able to make you kind of deal with that it was really awesome for me, and it helped not only us, but anybody else who was at that party who had a loss as well.
It's a great point. I think many of us can relate to that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You weren't the only one. Yep.
Yeah. And
can you just elaborate a little bit about the support and some of the things that people might have said to you that really helped you through the grieving process, or maybe it's something that somebody did that didn't help you?
Oh, absolutely.
And it was the wrong thing, but I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So it was hard for our families because my wife has 3 other sisters. I have 2 sisters, no brothers on either side. And no one in our family has ever had a loss. So they have no idea what we were dealing with, and they didn't know how to approach us, how to talk to us. So after we lost our son, Dexter, we live only like 5 minutes away from her parents, and they invited us because my wife couldn't go back in the house because last time we were there, she was pregnant with our son, and I couldn't stay in front of the house. I just can't do it for a while. So they offered to have us stay at their house for a couple weeks, which was awesome. They didn't, we were allowed to do whatever we want. Just, if we wanted to talk about it, we didn't have to talk about anything they wanted to, but they were there for us if they needed us. And my father-in-law kind of, the one thing that I struggled with after that was my faith. I was starting to really question God a little bit, just because of the fact that why does this keep happening to us? Why do we have 2 losses, and why can't we just keep our babies? I don't understand. And I think that's a lot of people who struggle with their faith probably has those same exact questions. They just don't understand. And he shared a lot of wisdom with me that night, and kind of brought me back to God, and kind of made me see the things from a glass half full perspective rather than a glass half empty. And that meant so much to me, because I was worried that I was going to lose my faith completely, and I can understand why people do end up losing their faith after they experience like traumatic events and loss and everything else. So like from that perspective, I completely understand. And then So most of our families didn't know how to talk to us, approach us about it, but they were there for us if we needed to talk to them, which that's all we wanted. But some of our friends were really awesome, brought over meals for us so we didn't have to cook dinner. So for weeks and months on end, we didn't have to eat anything, make dinners, or, not eat anything, but, didn't have to make dinners.
It's all taken care of for you.
Yeah. And that was awesome. And some of her friends actually had losses themselves, so they completely understood us, and we talked to them for a little bit, and so I found that talking to people who went through the same thing as us or a similar situation, it was easy to talk to about our grief, just because it wasn't so awkward. Because I know like whenever you talk to family who has never experiencing a loss or anything like that, it's very awkward. Even if you bring their name in normal conversations, they kind of just don't know how to respond. And like even to this day, like when we send like Christmas cards or anything, we always sign Celeste and Dexter after our names too, because they are our kids, and we always talk about our kids, and we want to talk about our kids, and we hope that people want to listen to us talk about our kids.
Yeah, that's
makes
great.
sense.
Yeah.
Speaking of your kids, I think if my math's right, and I know we're running near the end of time here, but would be really interested to understand. It looks like Chris would have been 12 when you lost Dexter.
Yeah.
If I'm recalling from our guests and certainly our experiences, that is the oldest that there was an older child in that relationship, when many of us had younger kids, and the innocence of little children. What was that like with a preteen going through all of this?
It's hard. My son is just like me. He likes to just keep things inside, doesn't want to talk about his feelings at all. And as a parent, it's hard, like, how do you explain to your 12-year-old, like, what's happening? He was so excited for both of our pregnancies, because he was going to we were finally able to give him a sibling. He waited so long, and it's been such a long time since he was born. And so he just keeps silent to himself. He doesn't really talk about his siblings at all. Never wants to look at their pictures. We have his urn in a case at our house, when we have one thing I forgot to mention is that after we lost Dexter, we have a stuffed teddy bear that we recorded his heartbeat on, and we put it inside the teddy bear. So every once in a while we listen to his heartbeat, which is amazing. And every once in a while I go over there and just listen to it and cry. But my son has a hard time. He doesn't want to go over there, which I completely understand. He doesn't want to look at pictures. So I said, whenever you are ready to talk about him or see him, he's there, and we are here for you. But even 2 years later, he kind of just doesn't really talk about him, which, it's totally understandable. He's still 14. He's still young. He doesn't understand loss and stuff. And yeah.
So tell us a little bit about where you are now as a relationship with Sarah. We talked a little bit before we started the podcast that you might want to start your own podcast, and I commend you for being so honest and talking about your feelings. Give us a little take on what you're thinking and where you guys are as a couple.
Yeah, absolutely. We are great. We've actually never been more in love and never been happier than we've ever been. And I think it was large in part Emma's footprints and our faith that kept us going. We had a great support system. We have a great doctor now that we could talk to about anything. And the reason why I bring up doctor is because 1 year later, after we found out we were pregnant with Dexter, we got pregnant again. And this time the story is a lot different. Our son, Bowen Dexter Scott, was born October 21st, 2022, or 2023, excuse me. Or 2022, this year, whatever.
We're going into the future.
Yeah.
Wow.
So now I have a 4-month-old. That pregnancy was crazy, because it's almost like God was talking to us in that moment, because it was like the exact same timeline as Dexter. So that whole pregnancy, we were freaked out the entire way. And we found out the reason why we lost Dexter was because my wife had an incompetent cervix. It just opened up and nothing you can do. And they said, unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about it. So for this pregnancy, we had what they call a cerclage done. It's a surgery where they just close it. They just sew it all up nice and tight. And that seemed to do the trick. And we were able to have a successful pregnancy. And
good for you.
Yeah.
We're so happy for you.
We're so happy
Thank you.
for you. Yeah.
Congrats.
Well, we're go ahead.
The best thing, I just want to say the best thing after a loss is to celebrate a birth of a child. And that is the best way to help deal with your grief. I never thought that would actually help me with my grief. I thought it was going to make it worse, but it actually really helped a lot.
Absolutely.
We're so happy for you, Scott.
Absolutely.
Many men do get that experience, many don't, but those that do, it's pretty beautiful. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I know, amazingly, we're yes.
Newborn.
What's that?
Send us pictures.
Oh, absolutely.
We'd love to see the newborn.
And we gave him his middle name Dexter to honor his brother, and I can't wait to tell him that story of why he has that name. And we also have a tradition in our family that we always give the first male, well, in this case, second male, third male in our family our name as their middle name. So that's why it's Dexter Scott as well.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, I can't believe we're already almost up to an hour here. We could talk to you for a long time, and I got a feeling this won't be the end of it. But as we always love to do, we want to give you the final words here to speak anything on your heart, and certainly to speak Dexter and Celeste's name. So
I just want to say, first of all, you brought off my podcast that I'm about to get started. It's going to be called the Unimaginable Stories Podcast, where we're going to be covering stories similar to this, where I want to bring on people talking about child and infant loss, PTSD, and things, just stories that are all real and relatable, that kind of learning how to deal with situations after a loss and after any traumatic event, because we've experienced a lot of things in our life. So I just wanted to point that out because you brought that up.
We wish you all the best, man.
Thank you.
We're in your corner to support.
And thank you so much for having me on. It was an honor to talk about my kids on here, because I'm always willing to talk about my children, and I'm glad that you guys started this we have something to go to for help, and I hope it helps out a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Scott, can I say one thing? I'm so jealous of you to have your baby's heartbeat inside of a teddy bear. I think that's the fantastic thing. I'm not gonna lie to you. I
didn't even know that was a thing. That's so amazing.
Yeah. We went to Build-A-Bear after, and the weirdest thing about that is that heartbeat that we recorded, that was the last heartbeat that I heard before we lost them. So that's it. So and that was like,
that's so beautiful.
Yeah. And so that means even more to me than anyone could ever imagine. I don't know. And if it ever runs out, I'm sure we can get replaced because we have the recording still. So,
hey, and you know what? If you can send us a video of that, man, we'd love to share that on our social. I think it's inspiring.
I can do that
Scott,
for you.
It's been incredible getting to meet you. We are so honored that you shared your stories, Dexter's and Celeste. Your rainbow with Bowen, and the good work that you're going to put back into the world too with your podcast. So we hope to be a part of that journey and support in any way we can.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here with us.
Oh, absolutely.
Brian, Brandon,
no
absolutely. We love you guys.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank
you.
Love
you guys.
Listeners, thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.
Love you guys.
Love you.
Love you. If you valued from this content, we ask you to share this podcast with others that can equally benefit. Leave us a 5-star review on whichever platform you're listening to help us improve our outreach, and to follow Guys in Grief on Instagram and Facebook. Also, if you'd like to join us and share your story, email us at guysandgrief@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.